The rival syndicate had learned slowly and expensively that Jae-Won could not be moved directly. He was too careful, too protected, too many steps ahead of any blade aimed at his own chest. But every careful man has a soft perimeter, and theirs had finally located it, not the chairman. The people he had begun, however quietly, to care about. They had watched him for weeks, his patterns, his schedule, the particular way his security detail's attention sharpened whenever Sienna Delacroix's name appeared on his calendar. They understood with the cold clarity of people who had spent their careers finding the gaps in other men's armor, that they could not touch her directly without inviting a response that would end them. But they could touch the people around her. They could make her feel, for the first time, what it cost to be loved by a man like Yoon Jae-won. It was not, strictly speaking, a new strategy. Every organization that had ever tried to bring down the Yoon Syndicate before them had eventually reached the same conclusion. The chairman himself was a fortress, but a fortress's walls only mattered if you were foolish enough to attack them directly. The clever siege always found the well outside the walls instead. Kwon Min-ji had become, without ever intending to, the person at Hanryo who understood Sienna's work most completely and defended it most fiercely. She had also, without either woman quite noticing when it happened, become something close to a friend, the kind Sienna hadn't let herself have fully since university, because friendship required a vulnerability her professional life had trained her out of. The conspiracy noticed what Sienna had not, that hurting Min-ji would hurt Sienna without anyone needing to touch Sienna at all. Min-ji had no idea any of this was true. She simply knew she had made a friend she liked more than she'd expected to, in a woman who took her seriously in a building that too often didn't, and she had no framework at all for understanding why that friendship had quietly become a liability, large enough to warrant a stranger's car outside her building for 3 nights running. Min-ji noticed the car outside her building for the 3rd night in a row before she said anything to anyone, because she was, like Sienna, a woman who trusted her own read of a room before she trusted anyone else's reassurance. She had grown up in a Seoul where a woman learned early to notice things: a lingering glance, a car parked too long, a stranger who appeared twice in the same week in places that shouldn't have overlapped. "I think someone's watching my building," she told Sienna the next morning, in the careful, unhysterical tone of a woman who had decided panic would not help her. Sienna's expression didn't change. Her attention entirely did. "Describe the car. Dark sedan. Tinted windows. Same 2 men, or I think it's the same 2 men. Hard to tell at that distance in the dark. 3 nights running, always between 11 and 1. Sienna felt something cold move through her chest. Not fear, exactly, though fear was in it somewhere. Something closer to recognition. She had spent years learning to read danger in boardrooms, in the micro-expressions of executives who'd rather lie than lose face. This was a different register entirely, and it frightened her precisely because she had no professional framework for it. "Have you told building security?" "They said they'd keep an eye out. I don't think that means much, honestly." It doesn't," Sienna agreed. "Give me an hour." "What can you possibly do in an hour that building security can't do in 3 nights? Sienna hesitated, not because she doubted the answer, but because giving it meant admitting out loud to a friend exactly how far her life had drifted from anything resembling ordinary since the night she'd knocked a whiskey glass from a stranger's hand. "I know people who take this kind of thing seriously," she said finally. "Let me use that. Please." Min-ji studied her a moment, the particular studying of a woman who has just been handed a piece of a puzzle she hadn't known she was assembling. "Okay," she said simply. "I trust you." It was, Sienna thought later, one of the more devastating sentences anyone had said to her in months, not because it was unkind, but because it was so plainly, uncomplicatedly generous, offered by a woman who had no idea what she was actually trusting. Sienna went to him directly, which she had never done before for anything but the diagnostic. This time she came not as a consultant reporting a finding, but as a woman asking a man with resources to use them, a shift in the architecture of their relationship that neither of them named aloud but both of them felt. "I need a favor," she said, "and I need you to not ask me why it matters as much as it does. Tell me what you need." Minji. Someone's watching her building. I don't know if it's connected to the board conspiracy or something else entirely, but I want eyes on her that aren't mine, because mine aren't enough from a corner office. Jae-Won did not hesitate, which told her more about the shift between them than any rooftop conversation had. He picked up his phone before she'd finished the sentence, already speaking in low, rapid Korean to someone on the other end, giving an address she hadn't given him yet, because she realized with a small jolt he'd had Minji's address on file for weeks, the way he apparently had everyone's address who moved in Sienna's orbit. "It's done," he said, setting the phone down. "And Sienna, I won't pretend I don't already suspect why she's a target. Because she's close to me. Because she's close to you." Sienna sat with that a long moment, the particular weight of understanding, for the first time with total clarity, that loving this man had made her a liability to the people she cared about, whether or not she'd asked for the arrangement. It was a math problem with no clean solution, and she hated, more than almost anything in her carefully controlled life, math problems with no clean solution. "I need you to be honest with me about something," Sienna said. "Is this going to keep happening? People close to me becoming targets because of what's between us?" "I won't lie to you and tell you no," he said. "I can tell you that I will do everything in my power to make sure it costs them more than it costs you. That's the only honest promise I have." Loving a dangerous man means everyone around you becomes part of the risk. Subscribe to see how far Sienna will go to protect the people she loves. The watchers outside Minji's building found themselves within hours, quietly and thoroughly, outmatched by men who did not announce themselves and did not need to. Minji never saw them. She went to bed that night unaware that the car she'd noticed 3 nights running had been persuaded, through means she would never be told about, to relocate permanently. Sienna, watching a single text arrive from Jae-Won. "She's safe. It won't happen again," felt something settle in her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with trust, offered without her having to ask for it twice. It frightened her a little, how quickly she had come to expect that kind of reliability from a man. It frightened her more, how much she had come to want it. She called Min-ji, careful in her wording, to let her know the situation had been looked into, a phrase vague enough to satisfy without inviting the follow-up questions Sienna wasn't ready to answer. "You didn't have to do that," Min-ji said, and there was something in her voice. Gratitude, yes, but also the beginning of a question she wasn't asking yet, about exactly what kind of resources her friend now had access to and why. "Yes, I did," Sienna said, simply. "That's what people who care about each other do." "Sienna, who exactly did you call?" Sienna sat with the question a moment, weighing the cost of a half-truth against the cost of a truth Minji wasn't ready to carry. "Someone with better resources than a corner office," Sienna said. "I promise you're safe. I promise I'll tell you more when there's more I can responsibly tell you. Can that be enough for tonight?" "For tonight?" Minji said. "Not forever." "Not forever," Sienna agreed and meant it, and hated a little how much that promise now cost her to keep. What neither of them knew yet, the men who had been watching Minji's building had been paid, 3 layers removed through a shell account, with a very old, very familiar name buried at the bottom of its ownership chain, not the rival syndicate's name. A name from a different family, entirely, the one Sienna had never learned to fear, and the one now, quietly, colliding with a war she didn't yet know she'd been born into. That's this episode of Whiskey and War. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe so you don't lose your place. Next episode, What Declan Said. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.